Today, we're reviewing Matt Miller's brand new 2026 NFL mock draft. Let's get right into this. If you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is my board. It has all players I've graded in, all 22. There are over 290 of them. There's actually more, but I'm moving them over to a 2027 board for the guys I think would return. But if you guys want to see the full list, please feel free to go over to the Patreon. $5 a month. You get the full draft board, all my evals, stock reports. That's great because even though this week I wanted to put it out, something like this pops up out of nowhere, the Patreon people always get to eat. So that you guys are going to be able to see that, as well as me catching up on Rookie Watch, which is a quick breakdown of every single rookie who has played offense or defense getting a rep. So feel free to go check that out. But let's get into this. This does have trades, including this number 1 overall pick. The Jets have moved up to number 1 to select Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana. The Jets are spoiled with draft capital, and surprisingly, they're a much better team than what their draft position usually suggests. Not many teams that are really this ass have 2 stellar young franchise tackles, and they have a franchise wide receiver, another super high ceiling wide receiver, a really high quality running back duo. So you're just in a perfect spot if you really want to try to push for a competition. If you go with Fernando Mendoza here, or you can go after Ty Simpson. I do think Simpson ended up having some stumbles as of recently, but overall, the whole package, given how much experience he's had and how much growth he's already had, there's definitely a lot to love for Ty Simpson's camp. Fernando Mendoza, definitely worthy of praise as well. Experience in multiple systems and having success in both. So that can make him a little bit more translatable early on. So the Jets go after their quarterback. And then at number 2, the Browns end up moving up 1 spot to select Dante Moore, quarterback out of Oregon. Todd McShay has said that Dante Moore is going back. Now, I believe what Todd McShay is saying because he's hearing it from inside sources at I almost said UCLA because it's where Dante Moore originally was, but Oregon, and saying that the family's on board, he's on board, the coaching staff's on board. So we'll see what happens. But if Ty Simpson's out of this class, then I would end up saying, if one of these quarterbacks are out of the class, the remaining could be worth moving up for, given maybe the Raiders might want to get aggressive, or there's obvious contenders that might want to be moving up. So sometimes people are always like, why would they do a 1-spot flip? Because maybe the Giants were willing to move down more and there were other suitors. It just happens. So Browns go after quarterback Dante Moore, who, if I'm not mistaken, grew up and was born in East Cleveland. So it'd be fun to see him go back home. Again, I do not think he's coming out in this draft. At number 3, the New York Giants go CeCe Mauigoa, right tackle out of Miami. Again, ended up acquiring extra draft capital via a trade down. The question is, you're going to, some scouts see Mauigoa as, okay, so this is saying the Vision's right tackle. Some talk about the ability to go to guard. I got the pleasure of seeing CeCe Mauigoa in person at SMU, and he passed the eye test. I do think that he is someone who I would still heavily consider in the guard role, but I don't think he would fail as a tackle, and that's a pretty damn good spot to be in as you start trying to figure out maybe where Marcus Bowe should end up being. And I really do like your offensive line coach. So even though I would not put CeCe this high, I do believe that, right now he's at number 15 on my board. It's just certainly a player that if you could maybe trade down more, I'd be more open to. At number 4, the Tennessee Titans go Jordan Tyson, wide receiver at Arizona State. As long as the health checks out, because all of his injuries that people will say are injury red flags, they're all not related. So it's not like it's a repeated issue, just could be bad luck. And so knock on wood, that's the case. Talent-wise, Jordan Tyson's the best in the class, but every single receiver will have their own respective argument. It's hard to just choose one over the other because they're all so damn good. And the Titans need a wide receiver 1. Great spot to take it. Number 5, Las Vegas Raiders go Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama. So again, you're talking about the reason why maybe the Browns traded up is maybe the Raiders were interested in not getting these sloppy thirds. But for them, they're getting my QB1 in Ty Simpson. And this is an understatement. Geno Smith, the terrorist, has not worked out in Las Vegas. If you guys are really tapped into Instagram, I don't really see this enough on X. There's a lot of memes that are basically saying, like seeing Geno Smith on the side of the road. And then it's like, just the guys pulling off to the side of the road to just hit Geno Smith. And I think there was like one where Gino was basically talking about like some type of terrorist act. I'm like, oh my God, guys. Twitter and like these people who make sports memes are just crazy. I mean, I envy that level of humor just because of the fact that like I myself one day hope to be able to just do random shit like that. Like my mind cannot process like seeing somebody go and try to hit a deer or something and try to put a Geno Smith face on it. But God bless them, that those who do, because it is very cheap entertainment. But yeah, Geno Smith's been ass. Ty Simpson can step in day one and be a huge asset for the Raiders. At number 6, the New Orleans Saints go Arvell Reese, linebacker slash edge out of the Ohio State University. His grade is up to date now. I did reevaluate him. He was at number 11 on my board as a linebacker slash edge. Now he's more of an edge slash linebacker. I still think there's a world where he's a better linebacker than edge. But luckily, when you're with Brandon Staley, I think you're going to be doing a perfectly fine job. So I love the fact that he can be basically an outside linebacker in the 3-4 system. It is the best of both worlds. At number 7, the Washington Commanders go Ruben Bain Jr., edge rusher out of Miami. Super high floor, top 5 player in the class. Someone who didn't necessarily pass the eye test to me, but still an excellent player. I think Ruben Bain Jr. is going to be a very reliable option at the very minimum at the next level, and that's well worth the selection there at 7. At number 8, you got the Bengals going Keldrick Falk, edge rusher out of Auburn. I've been saying this. Keldrick Falk pretty much fits what the Bengals look for as an organization at edge, except for in one key area, and that's athleticism. Like, I don't really think he is a plus RAS guy. He'll have the arm length, he'll have the size, and he'll have the measurables, but he will not have the athletic traits that so far the Bengals have primarily looked for high in the draft with their edge rushers. So I just do not think this is a good fit. I think this is a primary opportunity to go after Mansour Delane or after Caleb Downs. I think those are the two picks that need to happen. But yeah, I don't really believe this would be a net positive move. Keldrick Falk also has been flirting with his weight quite a bit, from like 288 to 270 to 285. There's been a lot of fluctuation, and it's because Auburn also utilizes him sometimes as a nose tackle. So, I mean, it's going to be weird seeing somebody try to transition from a tweener role to a full-time edge at number 8 overall when, again, they have not stabilized an identity. It just, to me, screams like if you try to see someone who has multiple personalities, you're not necessarily going to say you have an identity. Maybe that works, but the Bengals are looking for one primary identity, not two. That's kind of what Keldrick Falk is having to sort out right now. And Auburn's system, not necessarily too beneficial to him, which is pretty rare because I love how Auburn utilizes their defenders on average. Number 9, we got the Arizona Cardinals going Caleb Downs, defensive back out of Ohio State. It is the definition of best player available. For me, I'd prefer to go after the best impact player available, which to me is Spencer Fano. I think that his talent as a right tackle would be the most beneficial to the Cardinals. It's why I've made that move several times over the past couple weeks for the Cardinals. But Caleb Downs is far from an awful option. Like, you are talking about Jalen Thompson being up for a contract, and then Budda Baker doesn't have probably more than 3 more years, I assume. Like 33 is where like I don't really see too many safeties consistently competing after. So, God bless Budda Baker if he can do that. I will say Caleb Downs will be a cornerstone for the next 10 to 15 years. So it is a nice breath of fresh air, and it's something I do think is feasible. Number 10, Los Angeles Rams go Spencer Fano, tackle out of Utah. I will say this. Whoever the Cardinals take here between Downs and Fano, I do think could end up being the resulting pick for the Rams. And I'd prefer for the Rams to get Spencer Fano than Caleb Downs, because first off, the Rams have kind of like a green thumb when it comes to the defensive backs at this point. And they've been doing it with cheaper value, like 3rd round and beyond. Caleb Downs is at the top of this draft. Could you just imagine the Rams having that level of talent? That'd be a bit more scary. The Rams also had a green thumb in terms of like offensive line talent, but with Spencer Fano, I guess there's more questions than there is Caleb Downs. But regardless, both moves are fantastic. I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here for going after Caleb Downs for the Cardinals. But Rams need a right tackle. Spencer Fano, best right tackle in the class. Makes a lot of sense. Number 11, you got the Dolphins going Jermod McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee. He has yet to play a rep this year. I don't know why people are so stuck on Jermod McCoy. It is kind of a little bit head scratching to me. I also don't understand why we're projecting him to come out. He's a true junior. Everyone's saying, oh, I mean, look what happens with all these other players who, decide to stay a year, boost their draft stock. And look at Garrett Nussmeier, look at Drew Aller. Okay, sure. But at the same time, we would find out really quickly if they were asked or not in the NFL. And between you and me, I don't want my team taking a guy who's actually kind of a bum. That's just my honest take. And we don't know what Jermon McCoy is. I'm not saying he's going to be a bum. What I'm going to say is he doesn't have any tape this year. Zero. He's still recovering. So, I mean, unless he comes back and like somehow Tennessee makes a super strong push and then they end up making like he comes back and is getting like 8 picks in the matter of a couple games. I just don't see the logic of him coming out because it's not like the season in 2026 would be noticeably worse than a no season this year. And it's not a no season because he knows his draft stock is so good, so he's holding out. No, he literally is not healthy enough to play. So I just personally don't see it. I love the fit on the Dolphins just to like talk about it if he somehow comes out. But I mean, cornerback is such a volatile position. You guys know, if you guys have been friends of the show for a very long time, you guys know how much I am passionate about corner. I love corners. It's just my thing. Don't know why. I played 7 years. Not a single one remotely even breathed air on corner. So, and I suck at corner in real life. But for some reason, maybe it's kind of like coaches don't play. Maybe that's just the way I am with corners. But it's such a volatile position. Why on earth would an organization say, I've seen some really good tape of yours. You got a noticeable injury. You also didn't have the best track speed. And then you also hurt your knee. I'm going to take you to top 15. Like it doesn't add up to me. So I would be a bit concerned there. I do like the fit, but again, it just doesn't check out, especially in the NIL era, especially when Tennessee is getting, Colton Hood, very, very, very high praise. It doesn't seem like the system's perfect. The age is right. Like it seems like the right situation for him to return to school unless he sucks, which then if you're a Dolphins fan, you sure as hell don't want someone who's not going to be good at number 11. So I'm just going to say, for the purity of football, for the purity of our eyeballs, I would also, and then probably the pocketbook as well, because I assume Jermon McCoy would end up going back to being a very good corner in 2026. I think he should return. 12, we got the Minnesota Vikings going Peter Woods, defensive interior out of Clemson. Honestly, I don't necessarily mind it. I know you guys invested a shit ton of money on the defensive line this past offseason, but going best player available is far from the worst thing you can do. Peter Woods is, to me, the second best player in the class. He's abnormally strong. His high-level wins are just jaw-dropping. He does have that blue chip upside to him, and I think that's worth taking at number 12. I don't think you have to, because I've skipped on him before, but if they do, then I think it's a smart move because, again, the best way you can handle the draft is by just getting the best players. Of course, there's going to be the little nuances of value, how you can play the board. But I'm just going to be honest. If you can get a number 2 overall player at number 12, I mean, Peter Woods hasn't killed anybody yet. I mean, remember Jalen Carter fell because of all these legal stuff. I'm not equating the two, but I'm just saying a top-end talent slipped to number 10. Or it might have been number 9. I think there was a swap between the Bears and the Eagles. But all I'm going to say is, if you can get the talent, get the talent. And I haven't heard anything off the field for him. 13, the Cowboys go Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame. Jeremiah is awesome. I finally regraded him today. He's my number 16 player in the class. Great home run hitting ability. I do think sometimes he can almost get too enamored with cutting back too much to where he's trying to cut back behind the line of scrimmage. They're all moving to the left, and he'll just try to cut back to the right without really processing how the linebacker hasn't committed. And that causes him to be one-on-one with a linebacker, no blockers in front of him at the line of scrimmage. I do think sometimes he makes those mistakes. I don't think that he's necessarily the best blocker on planet Earth, but far from like an actual slouch. It's just, he's a damn good back. It's very hard to score high for me in the running back realm. I do not think he's on the tier of Omarion Hampton or Ashton Genty, but I do think he's a damn good back. For the Cowboys, I'd recommend, even though I did this yesterday, the more I've thought about it, more I've talked with you guys about it, which, by the way, best part of the job is talking with y'all about it. You're a fan of one team. I'm a fan of 32. It's always nice to understand when you guys are looking at all the press conferences, seeing all the news, all the beat writers saying what's going on in the building. It's always fun to hear that because it is just simply too much, or at least it doesn't make sense for me to go through all of that information because I'm not going to process it as well as you either. So I try my best, but you guys make the job so much more rewarding and so much easier. So always feel free to comment. Be a dick. Don't be a dick about it. But regardless, I mean, oh, wait, what? Hold on. Oh, ooh, that's a bold statement. So, for those of y'all who are listening, this quote says, I think Love is one of the 3 best players in the class and a running back prospect. It's not or I guess an RB. It's a running back prospect. Who gives a shit? Prospect on par with Bijan Robinson or Saquon Barkley. If that's your conviction, the Cowboys should easily take him at 13. I'm not there. I will say, though, for the Cowboys, they've maximized value at running back twice in a row. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to hit it on the 3rd time, but I also do believe you might not have to invest one of your first-round picks to be able to fix that running back position. And there's a lot of other positions to fix. Speaking of one player who possibly could fit into it, again, I think off-field is a big concern here. David Bailey, edge rusher at Texas Tech, goes to the Baltimore Ravens. A big issue I have with David Bailey is the fact that this year, you can look this up. There's a camera footage out there. He attacks a cameraman. He assaulted him. He battered him after the Arizona State game. The year before, because everybody does something dumb. You've done something dumb. I've done something dumb. In the moment, we regret it. It happens. But last year, in 2024, he ended up curb stomping a dude when he ended up playing NC State. Literally, the guy was on the ground, and he was repetitively curb stomping the guy after the play. There's something that's off there, and no one's talking about it. I can understand if you're going to talk about it and say, honestly, I don't think I'm going to factor it too much. This is a violent sport. I think that he can learn from his mistakes. That's a solid counter argument. Even if I don't agree, I can understand. No one's talking about it. And I genuinely do not know why. I don't know if David Bailey has a great agent that's just telling people, shut the fuck up. Or I don't know why I just can't logically understand why people wouldn't even mention it. I don't, it's not in here. So it's crazy to me. Honestly, it is crazy to me. But David Bailey, if everything checks out and you do believe that, you can look past those issues, which the Ravens kind of did last year too, then, understandably so, he's a top tier talent edge rusher in the class. And the Ravens need some defensive line help. At 15, the Chiefs go Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon. This past week definitely helped his draft stock. There was a moment where we were thinking that he might not even be a first-round pick, and then he reminds us of the talent that he truly has. He's a freak. The Sadiq the freak. I hope someone else has coined that term because I don't want to continue saying it if nobody else has done it. But Sadiq the freak to the Chiefs. Also such a great system to go to that is built for the tight end to get into space and then utilize their skill after the catch as well. Number 16, the Texans go Vega, guard out of Penn State. I definitely think improving the interior offensive line makes a ton of sense. I do like the idea because I know Sarah McCoy, she's been a longtime subscriber, brought this up. Big Texans fan as well. Shout out to you, Sarah. This organization does value measurables, and Vega's probably going to have pretty short arms. Caden Proctor does line up with how this organization evaluates talent. He is a really solid run blocker who's going to be a very solid guard, at least in the short run. And he has the upside to be a tackle. Injury strikes, or you just end up feeling like he will be in more of an asset as a tackle than maybe one of your other ones. Then I think that could end up being a little bit more opportune than Vega. And again, I've taken Vega to the Texans. I took it to him this week. But I do, love the discourse with you guys where we're discussing these ideas. And it makes sense. That's the whole entire point is we're trying to make connections. This is a fun experiment. I get to have fun every day. And you guys end up being able to talk with me, even though sometimes, it gives me my Louis Vuitton eye bags. It's still fun nonetheless. And, you guys having fun with me is the best part. 17, the Panthers go Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver out of USC. This is also a pick that I have made for the Panthers. I do think pass rush is super duper crucial. This edge rush class is very deep. So if you pass on it early, I think you'll be okay. Makai Lemon is an incredible dynamic receiver. I do think there's a part of me that wants to just say, screw it, continue going large and in charge and go Chris Bell here, wide receiver out of Louisville. Because I think Chris Bell is better than Makai after the catch. But at the same time, some people think Chris Bell is too close to Xavier Leggett. I think they're in completely different leagues. I did not like Leggett. I think I had a grade in the 60s for him. Bell into the higher 70s at 77.5 and a harder system to grade well in. So I had a pretty stark differential of opinion on Leggett as well as Bell. So I do think Bell would be a really, really good asset there with Tetro and McMillan for a nice 1-2 punch, and then give Leggett a little bit more room to breathe and do his thing, and Coker to be a really good 4. So I think that'd be a great receiving core. You wouldn't have to worry about it probably for another 4 years. It's kind of hard to say that. So I think it also helps out Bryce Young. You have to stress test players, but at the same time, you got to give them the right situation. And, we've been seeing more and more that Bryce Young has been able to get out of his shell, but I'm tired of the games kind of either being close or flukes. I want this to be consistent production and no government mandated interceptions. So I think Makai Lemon would be a good asset for that. 18, the Detroit Lions go TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson. I've seen some people throw out like late day 2 comps, and these are people who I respect. So, shout out to those individuals, because again, there's going to be players who have first round grades that I'll have late day 2, day 3 grades on. We're all going to disagree. This one is completely mind boggling to me though, because I was the one who had TJ Parker at like edge 11 or 12 starting the year. So it's like, of all people, I was the one who was super low on TJ. And now I feel like I have to support TJ. Now TJ is someone who is graded into the top 40 for me. So I guess you could call that a round 2 grade. I mean, I still haven't fully contextualized in my mind exactly what my grades fully mean besides like the actual impact they have. So I have like blue chip for the blue. I technically have generational, which is pink. Don't have any guys this class for that. I have starters, which is the green. And then I have fringe starters, which is the yellow. So all of this included, it is interesting to start contextualizing it more in terms of round grade. I prefer role because, I think when you're sitting here as a team, you're trying to fill roles, not necessarily like draft spots, but it's a difference of opinion. I do have TJ Parker as an edge 2, so a true starter, and he is someone who's going to be around that 40 range for me. So I understand the early day 2, late day 1, but great athlete, a lot of potential at his young age, and somebody who has all the technique in the world. And my biggest issue for him coming to the year was processing the game. Well, if he can be more of a number 2 edge and not a number 1, you're going to have less situations where that becomes an issue. At number 19, the Steelers go Carnell Tate, wide receiver at Ohio State. This would be the dream. I've had Carnell go as high as 2. He's a 90%, not above 90% contested catch rate this year. Great hands. Phenomenal. Improved as a blocker 10x over the season. And no one talks about that part. They always love to talk about the route running, which is definitely improved. I do think it's a little inconsistent still, but Carnell Tate has the deep threat ability. He has the blocking. He's built to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I would find it mind-boggling after Ohio State has produced so many wide receivers who are playing at a high level that Carnell would end up slipping to 19. But, I'm not going to complain. Number 20, we have the Cleveland Browns going Caleb Lomu, left tackle out of Utah. Very possible. High floor. I do think of him more as a guard, but I still would end up having him as a top 50 player as a tackle, which is really good value for a team that could be open to both. At number 21, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going Mansour Delane, cornerback out of LSU. What's up with all these people dropping Mansour Delane? I know he's dealing with a little bit of an injury bug, by the way, but this is somebody who should be going in the top 10. There's no doubt about it. But I do know the Buccaneers, with Jamel Dean being an unrestricted free agent, there definitely is a vacancy there. And this team is willing to spend a lot of draft capital. They spent a second and a third the year before on defensive backs. So it's certainly possible they might try to go back to the well if the value is right. At number 22, we got the Los Angeles Chargers going Amari Washington, defensive interior out of Oregon, 330 pounds. He'll be a great nose. And also with the mobility, it definitely feels like Jesse Minter's version of Kenneth Grant. So we can end up talking about that as well. I personally still think Amari is way too inconsistent. I think he definitely 100% needs to go back to school. But you do have Jamari Caldwell here. I'd prefer someone who's less like Amari Washington because I think Amari's skill set and Jamari are going to be very overlapping in terms of that the twitch and then the kind of like the technique in the pass rush game. I want someone to be a complete plug. And I just don't really think I don't really believe that Amari Washington has developed that consistency yet, and that scares the shit out of me. Just gonna put it point blank. So I'd prefer to go after Caden McDonald if this is the route that you choose. Of course, I prefer to go after offensive line. That's also just me. Speaking of Caden McDonald, he goes to number 23 to the San Francisco 49ers. I want to see the reasoning for this. I don't necessarily understand. Elite run defender, so okay, it doesn't really so, okay, they're talking about sack production, especially a defensive tackle. I don't necessarily love that personally. I'm not a huge fan of the reasoning there. For some reason, I thought Robert Beal was from a different class. That Can you guys correct me on that? I thought Robert Beal for some reason was from like the 2023 class. Maybe I'm thinking of a different edge rusher from Georgia, but regardless, like Michael, Alfred, CJ. I mean, CJ, I have a lot of faith in, as well as Alfred, to get sack production because I think Alfred was underrated as a pass rusher, a little bit overrated as a run defender. But the biggest thing was the fact that I think people just kind of only talked about him as a run defender, and he actually had some pretty good pass rush ability. So I personally don't really see the need for defensive interior, especially with the offensive linemen available. Also, the edge rush talent that is available. I personally would be opting more for those routes, but Caden McDonald's a stud. If you want to just pretty much forget about defensive interior for the next 5 years, that's your way to do it. Dallas Cowboys then go Damon Wilson, the second edge rusher out of Missouri. My biggest problem with Damon Wilson is the fact that he has like a 2% run stop rate. He is pretty much a designated pass rusher, and he's a damn good one. But I don't think the Dallas Cowboys need a designated pass rusher in the first round. You don't have, I believe, another pick until the fourth. So that's kind of a big deal, right? Your third round pick with the Steelers, the second round pick with the Jets. So that's a massive jump. And I'd prefer to get someone who's a little bit more well-rounded. And you might say, Alex, who is that? Clev Lubin, love him to death. Very similar build, 6'3", 250 to compared to 6'4", 250 with Wilson. If you want to have that build, but also have someone who's a little bit more of an enforcer, I'd recommend that. But on top of that, I mean, Max Llewellyn would be someone that you get with that next pick. I would probably hold off on the rest of the edges based on like the fact that a lot of them were taken. Of course, you guys know my opinion on Malachi Lawrence. I just don't think the NFL is catching up. Maybe they are. We don't know. That's why every night on draft night, we're like, who? Like, they think this guy's a first, but Malachi Lawrence, 263, 35-inch arms. I think he'd be a damn good fit on the Cowboys, but he also is not necessarily the best run defender. I really would hone in on Clev Lubin out of Louisville instead of Damon Wilson. At number 25, the Bears go Caden Proctor, tackle/guard out of Alabama. Absolutely believe in this as an opportunity. So you could end up being like a Mekhi Becton guard type. Obviously there's not necessarily they're not spring chickens at the guard roles. So you could end up having him develop in that spot. The biggest thing that holds me back from going tackle for the Bears as much as I want to is the belief that Ben Johnson and co are going to just say, like, we're giving up on Ozzie Trapilo. They're going to want to flip him to the other side and test him out. If you remember correctly, Penei Sewell was a left tackle and then ended up switching to right tackle for the Lions. They're not a team that should be pretty against flipping tackles. So I'm just going to say, as much as I would want to upgrade, I just don't think it's very likely to. And then at number 26, the Bills go Denzel Boston, wide receiver out of Washington. Keon Coleman being a healthy scratch opens this role wide open. I was worried that Denzel Boston and Keon Coleman would overlap, but it just doesn't look like Keon Coleman's going to be a part of their future plans. Maybe the Steelers can end up setting like a 7th round pick or doing like a 6th round for a 7th round pick swap based on the fact, again, when you start healthy scratching players, you're naturally just essentially giving up on them, and then you get rid of your leverage. Maybe it'll cost a 5th round pick for Keon, but I do hope a team like the Steelers ends up trying to utilize that and, taking him in and trying to have a resurgence to Keon Coleman's career. And then where Denzel Boston can end up thriving in the role that Keon should have been. Denzel has a great motor. I prefer some other receivers based on what's available, but I'm not going to shame this move at all. At number 27, ooh, I freaking love this pick. The Seattle Seahawks go Brandon Cisse. I hear Todd McShay say it a billion different ways. If you guys can't tell, the one draft show I do listen to on a regular basis is the Todd McShay show. I love Mensch, love Todd. Also, their quality of production has gotten just so much better. Like I would say during summer scouting, it was a lot less polished than it is now. Like everything feels super well done. So shout out to the crew as well who do a great job of producing that show. But Brandon Cisse is a baller. He ended up being absolutely sliced and diced this past week, so he might be due for a little bit of a fall. Maybe he'll end up being my top 15 instead of my top 10, but he is still a starting quality corner in the NFL. I think he's fantastic. He just ended up going up against 3 really damn good wide receivers there at Texas A&M. Thank God they didn't have Noah Thomas. His dumbass ended up somehow finding a way to Georgia where they had even more wide receiver talent, but I digress. This team in the Seahawks needs boundary corner help. Cisse would be a phenomenal asset. 28 Tennessee Titans. They end up going Colton Hood. Of course, they ended up getting this via that New York Jets trade. Colton Hood would be such a good pickup for the Titans. If the Titans can land both Colton Hood and Jordan Tyson, count your lucky stars. That is a fantastic acquisition. I mean, it's the dream. I mean, Borgonzi could end up just being heralded as like, master chef, Gordon Ramsay type of level of cooking if he does some shit like this. Colton Hood's fantastic. Again, also in Tennessee right now. Redshirt sophomore, don't know if he comes out. Honestly, it would be very intriguing to see if Jermod McCoy returns, if Colton Hood would return as well. And we might see like the most dominant Tennessee duo at corner. But I do think with, the instability at quarterback, i.e. Joey Aguilar was like a 6th or 7th year senior, there might be some more reason to say, okay, we don't fully understand our situation going forward, and they choose to be first-round picks instead. At number 29, Philadelphia Eagles go Jeremy Bernard, wide receiver out of Alabama. Not a fan of them spending this type of draft capital for their 3rd wide receiver at best. I just don't understand. I don't see this as a good move at all. If you're going to be completely honest, I do think like the guard role is open. I know it's not solely on Tyler Steen personally. Like, I know money-wise, Dickerson's not really able to move off of. But, I mean, the interior of the offensive line is not remotely what it used to be. So, if you're going to want to try to throw a dart, Emmanuel Pregnon could be that. But that's not something I'm recommending. What I am recommending is going after a player like, if you want to go Trevor Gooseby, you can go that route. Or if you want to look at the corner position, there's Avion Terrell. Literally is kind of very similar to the guy who just ended up, retiring while just being acquired in Jair Alexander. Makes a lot of sense there. Keith Abney doesn't have the athletic traits that I'd probably want, but you still could go after that. I just don't really think Jeremy Bernard brings anything to the table that you probably can't get with a 3rd round pick in a trade for a veteran. And that's not to shame Jeremy Bernard. I'm just saying the way the Philadelphia Eagles utilize their draft capital, I don't see the logic with taking Jeremy Bernard, who is going to be a wide receiver 3 at best in the 1st round. That's just very, very tough. So, I mean, if you want to replace A.J. Brown, get Chris Bell. But Jeremy Bernard, not saying he's bad at all, because I really do like Jeremy Bernard. But again, you're just a limited upside there. A limited role. Lower contested catch percentage. Not super tall. He's 6 foot. Not super heavy. He's at that 205 mark. He's a damn good wide receiver. But we're talking about the 1st round for a team that you're trying to replace a top 10 wide receiver when healthy. You're not going to do that with Jeremy Bernard. 30, New England Patriots go Chris Bell. Speak of the devil. Wide receiver out of Louisville. Freak show. 6'2", 220. Can burn and run routes and after the catch. Someone said, is it crazy to think Chris Bell could be the best wide receiver out of this class? No. Just depends on where he goes and where the other players go, obviously. But talent-wise, he's up there with the best. Then we have at number 31, the Rams go C.J. Allen, linebacker out of Georgia. I just regraded C.J. Allen. I have an early day 3 grade. It's going to be mind-boggling for you guys to hear that, but I do think linebacker is very hard in the NFL. It's not very translatable. You have to have certain skills to be able to translate well, and it's one of the hardest to do quickly. So I do have it a lot tougher for linebackers to perform well. But At the same time, the Rams have shown no desire to basically keep their linebacker talent that costs a lot. Like they just put low value at that position because it's a volatile position. And there's not that many great linebackers that are going to be worth the cost and the length of contract that the Rams would be having to give here. So I personally don't agree with this. At 32, this is a bit of a better linebacker here. The Denver Broncos go Anthony Hill Jr., linebacker out of Texas. Love seeing Vance Joseph utilize a pretty versatile freak here in Anthony Hill. We'll see if he even decides to come out because maybe they'll convince him to try to make a push for the chip next year. But that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching and showing the love you always do. I'll see you later. Peace.